We are live. Welcome, everyone. My name is Matthew Bochsler, and today we have a special guest for you, a phenomenal friend of mine of many years, Dr. Steve Peisner. And Steve, I asked him to be on my channel because I wanted to address the energy of the world right now, because pretty much everybody's either freaking out about money or they're pretending they're not freaking out about money. And hopefully some of the gems that Steve has as a longtime conscious investor will, be able to land in your world and give you a sense of something different. So, Steve, you'd like to introduce yourself? I'm super grateful to have you on the channel.
Hey, thanks, Matt. I'm really glad to be here. I wouldn't say I've been a conscious investor for a long time, but I have definitely been an investor for a long time. I think the consciousness around that came a lot later in life. I'd say most of what I did in investing and probably most of life for most of my life was unconscious. But for me, the school of investing was learning the hard way, learning by doing, by trial and error, and I learned to deconstruct a lot of the conventional wisdom and myths around investing in our particular place in the world and with the typical kinds of assets and things we work with. And so I hope to debunk a few of those kind of myths we have about how we're supposed to go about doing this.
Oh, it's so great. I mean, how often are we buying a lot or buying a truth that perhaps is a lie, and we're judging ourselves villainously that we must be doing something wrong, where we never actually ask, is this actually true, or am I trying to force it into becoming a truth, with finances, investing in money? So, since we're new, could you do something for me?
Sure.
Tell me a little bit about day one. You weren't always rich, were you?
No, in fact, I'm not rich now, but I definitely started out from zero. In fact, I did a lot of early investing in my 20s, but I really didn't start actually, let's say, accumulating capital or accumulating wealth until well into my 30s. I did make money. I learned a lot about investing. I worked as a stockbroker for a while. I worked with a financial planning company, and I worked with a real estate company. And I got those jobs without any real knowledge or skills, but just the desire to learn those industries. I wanted to know about the investing world.
So you said you got those jobs without any skills. This is beautiful. Tell us more. How did you go about getting a job? Was it you're just like, you desired it so much, it just happened? Was it magic? Was there a process?
Well, yeah, I mean, in the late 70s. Now I'm dating myself, of course, but I heard about stocks and bonds, and I heard about stockbrokers, and I thought, wow, stockbrokers seem to make a lot of money. So I went down. I was living in San Jose in the Silicon Valley area. I'd gone up there to go to law school, but dropped out in my second year, and I went to work for a real estate company, learned about that. And then I wanted to learn about stocks and bonds. There were four investment brokers on the same street in San Jose. I put on my best suit, walked down there one day and went into each one of them and said, I want a job as a stockbroker. And the fourth guy hired me. He said,
wow,
I know.
Really?
Yeah, really. I mean, I didn't. He said, I like your energy and I like your attitude, and we'll train you to be a stockbroker. So that's how I got that job. Yeah.
So you said they liked your energy. Most people think energy is about oil and gas. Tell people what that means. I like your energy.
Well, I think one of the most important things is believing that all things are possible in this live experience, and also that all things are possible for us. Sometimes we have that concept theoretically, but we don't believe that all those possibilities exist at every given moment. For me in particular, and for some reason, I always believed that, and I don't know why. No one really told me or taught me. I just thought that anything was possible. Like, I believe that if I walked down that street one day, that I would get a job, that somebody would hire me, and they did. So.
Right. So you talked a little bit about we've talked before, and you said you've had a lot of money, then you lost it all. And then you've had a lot of money and you lost it all. And you don't seem to make it a big deal. You're just like, okay, I'll go have a lot of money again. So what are the lies or the things you don't buy that the rest of the people and a lot of the people in the world may be buying, about that make it easy for you?
Well, I'm not sure it's easy for me, but I've learned over a period of time. But let's kind of go back to that question about what are some of the lies or some of the things that really these are just kind of semantics or things from my personal experience. But I mean, one of them is that investors know how to make money. I mean, we have this assumption that people who are investors, they know how to create money or create wealth. But in reality, the only people who can make money is the federal government. I mean, they print it in the basement whenever they need some more. I mean, most of us go to work, we have a job, and we earn money. We trade we trade hours for dollars. If you're an entrepreneur, you start a business, and that business, gains maybe sells a product and it gains a portion of an existing cash flow that already exists. I mean, I think for me, investors know where and how money flows through specific assets and asset classes. That's the key, is that, we talk about energy a lot, and we believe in this energy field that is constantly in motion around us. And we think of consciousness in the same way, that there's this web of consciousness that interlinks everything around us and includes us. And money is no different. It's the same thing. It's not something that is separate. It's just a tangible currency, but it's constantly flowing in and through assets all the time. And that's the nature of it. We're really fixated on this concept of ownership, but what we'll see is that investors learn how money flows through assets, different kinds of assets, and then learns how to take advantage of that. So it's not that we know how to make money, it's that money is already flowing and increasing. It can be in the form of income or appreciating assets or other modalities, but it's always there, just like energy or consciousness or other, more nebulous or obscure kinds of things. But so investors, they don't really make money. They know where to look for the money that is flowing. They tune into the energy of the flow, how it's flowing in, how it's flowing out, how it's flowing through, because that happens with all assets.
Sure. No, that's beautiful. So that totally demystifies the whole thing. So if you're not willing to acknowledge everything that's intangible in the world, it's going to be pretty hard to actually receive money, energy, money flows.
Yeah, if we live in dualism, we're kind of doomed, because we'll separate everything that we think is in the material world from everything that we think is in the immaterial or the transcendent or the spiritual world. And as soon as we do that, we create this artificial bifurcation. We create two realities, and we think that each reality has some different set of rules and different principles. And we try to work in one this way, and we try to work in one this way, and we compartmentalize our thinking. And I think if we realize it's all a whole, that everything belongs together and everything interacts together, that this, it's just like you got a table or you got a chair, but you also got atoms and you've got small subatomic particles and things and a lot of space in there. Now we can't see it, but we know it's true. And we also know that deeper reality is a more dependable and reliable reality than the table. Because the table can break and burn and change form, but the energy is not going to disappear.
Sure. That's beautiful. So if you're willing to actually be present with all aspects of money, then it's going to be pretty hard not to have money, energy moving in your world in some form. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. And it's also useful to think, I can't make money in my basement or they'll put me in jail. And if I trade my hours for money, then there's a limit to what I can do with it. But if I can see money as a flow of energy that is constantly in motion and that is interconnected with everything else essentially on the planet, then you realize that you have the same accessibility to that everyone has. Now, granted, some people have access to different information, and some people have education or learning, and we'll talk more about that. But once we see it as a flow, something that's flowing, because it's flowing around us right now. It's flowing in and through the place you're sitting in, whether it's a hotel room or your house, and it's everywhere. So it's just a shift in consciousness. And that's what we're talking about, right? Conscious investing, learning to think and see and process information differently. So how do we take this whole culture of investment, which is a big part of a capitalist structure? How do we take that whole thing and see it differently so we can figure out how to become part of it in a way that increases what's flowing through us? Because that's the whole point.
Sure. So, that's great. What are some other things that are like obvious for you from your experience that are that everyone's believing are true about money, but you're like, no, it's not. No wonder they don't have any money.
Well, everybody thinks you have to have money to be an investor. Everybody thinks that money is something that denotes or signifies you, kind of defines you as an investor. But you don't have to have money to be an investor. I started out with nothing and went back to nothing several times, but it's possible to invest and to become an equity participant in different assets that are flowing money without having any money of your own. And there's a lot of different ways to do that. Somebody just bought a house from me 3 months ago and had none of their own cash in it at all. I'll tell you exactly what they did. The house was on the market. It was something I bought to rehab and flip, and it was on the market for $159,000. And they wanted the house. They made an offer of $165,000, and then they asked for closing costs, and they asked for $8,000 kickback at closing. And so I calculated it, and it seemed like it was an okay deal, and it was a good buyer. So I accepted the offer. It appraised for $172,000, which put them in good shape. And they bought that house for nothing. They didn't have any money when they closed it.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Right.
And I bought many assets and in different forms and shapes without any money, especially when I was starting out. And there's all kinds of different ways to do that. But if you start seeing it as not as something you must have, the money is not the key. It's the consciousness that's the key, and it's learning how to see investment assets and asset classes differently and understand the flow of money. That's the key. We're going to ride a wave like a surfer. The wave is already there. Here's a great example. Look at a chart for 50 or 60 years of single family home prices in the United States. And essentially you've got these up waves for a long time, maybe 10 years, 12 years. We have these little corrections. Sometimes we have a big correction like 2008. But we don't create the wave. I mean, essentially it's a lot of complex market forces that create the wave. But by getting into that flow, we ride that wave. And that's all we're doing with any investment, really. Except, if you're creating a business, you're an entrepreneur, you're actually, you're not really creating the wave yourself unless you're on the cutting edge of some technology like electric cars or something. But even then, you have to have the context has to already be set for you. The demand has to be there. The materials have to be there. The technology has to be there. And so somebody just puts together the pieces of things that are there to gain access to some of that flow that's already moving.
Sure. I love it. Yeah. So you don't have to actually have money to actually generate money. You just have to be willing to get clear on what you've decided is true and find a way to get those points of view and opinions out of your world. And
Yeah, let me just give you two specific things on that, so people aren't wondering. Well, yeah, that's a nice in theory, but how does that work in real life?
Mhm.
So there's a whole category of people who have money, who have a lot of wealth, who are looking for people who will do the work related to various assets or various investments. They're too busy, and they are willing to partner with someone, and generally it's a very common arrangement. It's kind of a 50-50 arrangement. You've got a money partner, you've got a working partner, and you split profits. And I've done it with other people have done it with me, and it's a great way to get started with no money. What do you bring to the table? Generally, you bring the deal to the table. You find the opportunity. So you've honed this new consciousness, how to see, how to perceive, how to process this data and this information. And then you've got something that you could work with. Okay, let me give you a specific example of that.
Sure.
So in the winter, I was looking for some houses to buy for something to do until I could travel again during COVID. And so I bought 4 houses. One of them was really interesting. It had been on the market for 2 years. It was zoned commercial, so nobody had made an offer on it. It was in a little row of houses by the hospital. So it was a great location. It was a 100-year-old house, but it was built like a fortress with all this poured concrete and hardwood, and it was just a beautiful house. And it was on the market for probably about half price of what it would have been if it was a house. Okay, so the market value for that house was probably 160,000. But it needed some repairs too. But the zoning was the big problem because no one could get residential zoning for it, and nobody wanted it for a business. But it was a house. So the real estate agent showed me the house, and it was for sale for 80,000. So that's a good price, but not as a commercial building. So I called the city and I said, "Hey, what can I do with this?" And they said, "Oh, we got this new zoning classification for like part office and part residential, but it's a residential zoning, so you can get a residential loan." And so I called the agent and I said, "Look, I'll give you half price for it. I'll give you 40,000 for it." You tell him. Yeah, he just laughed and said, "Well, he's not going to take that." But he called me back 2 hours later and said he said he'd take the deal. So I got under contract for 40,000, and then I went through and I closed escrow, and I went to the city. 30 days later, I had it rezoned residential, and I just put about 10,000 into it just so I could flip it, and the next person could make some money by finishing up the repairs and stuff, and made about $60,000 profit on that one.
That's brilliant. So you're just willing to not to just listen to everybody say this is the rules, this is how it goes, but you're always looking consciously for a different possibility and asking what else is possible here that nobody's looking at.
Now, if you'd found that house and you got it under contract and you said, "Hey, Steve, I found this house. Here's what the situation is. Here's this deal. I got under contract for 40. I think we can flip it for 100, but I don't have any money." I would have said, "Okay, I'll put up the 40,000 and you do the work on this thing to get it to flippable state, and then we'll split the profit. What do you think?" That's how it would have worked. And there's plenty of people out there who will do that with you.
Sure.
Lots and lots and lots of them. Because it's fun. You know, when certain people reach a certain level, they're looking for things that are interesting and fun, and they like helping other people to learn. So that's one way that you can do it. And the other way that you can do it is by the example I gave of the house that I sold, is by structuring a deal in such a way that it requires either very little or no capital of your own. That's a little harder to do with some things, but
sure.
You know, during COVID, there was so much money flowing out there. People were calling all the time, wanting me to borrow money or to invest money in this and that. And they were calling people all over the country because there's just, I mean, I think it's contracted a little bit now, but anyway, I'm just saying that your mindset, your consciousness about this particular culture we call investing is the most important thing. It's more important than having any money of your own.
That's brilliant. You know, I had another friend of mine often tell me years ago, he's like, there was more millionaires and billionaires made during the Great Depression than any time in history. is that the same energy that they're not going to immediately go, oh, this is what everybody's saying for it, and they were saying, oh, what's actually possible here that I have to look out of the box to find, or is it something different?
Yeah, see, we tend to think that, that's another myth. We tend to think that we can only make money when something's going up in value. And that's just simply not true. And I mean, all sophisticated investors, of which I'm not including myself, I'm talking about hedge funds and investment bankers, and
Okay.
the professional investors who manage billions of dollars. They make money all the time. It doesn't matter what it's doing, and it doesn't matter what the asset is. I just read, where everyone here is talking about having a declining real estate market. And I just read that a big hedge fund raised $30 billion just to get in position to buy real estate if there's the slightest pullback. So that's how, someone kind of in a little lull in a market will prepare to jump in. And so that's another example of the flow, trends and flows and how money moves through asset classes. That's what we want to learn. That's what we want to get our head around.
Sure. So, yeah, going back to the first piece that you were talking about too, about it's all about the energy when you went to look for your first job, and he's like, no, you got the energy we want. We'll train you.
Right.
What do you think's the common populace? What do you think the common population believes most about having the right energy for something? Are they always going, where do they go? Do they always go to, I'm wrong, I'm small, I'm my parents' points of view, or what's, I know you've been in huge populations of students as a teacher and have probably seen a lot of this. What's your perspective on it?
Well, my perspective comes from my experience in psychology practice and teaching, and in my own, especially my own inner journey. Mm-hmm. And I think most people, and I put myself at the front of the line, are plagued with negative voices, with limiting, oppressive, and kind of controlling energies. Their voices literally in our head that, I mean, we fight them, right? And we work hard to have a positive attitude and a creative outlook on life, and to believe that we have the power to create. But there's those emotional energies are very, very strong and very powerful. And we also kind of believe that for me to succeed, somebody else has to fail, or I have to dethrone somebody for me to get to that next position. And it's just simply not true.
Oh, say more about that. I love this. This is the biggest lie in my world. Yeah. So how do you go around it? How does it get created? How do you uncreate it? Yeah. Start wherever.
Yeah, because okay, so there's an elite and they own most of the wealth of the world, but that doesn't make any difference, because all their money is at work flowing. It's all flowing through the same system. Doesn't matter who owns it, right? Mm-hmm. So all we're trying to do is learn to see things differently in this world, the energy of assets. Then we learn how to dream and imagine and create. Oh, I can get this thing rezoned, or oh, I can restructure this. I remember when I was first starting out, I was working with some builders in Atlanta, Georgia, and we had invested some money for some other people down there, and I was down watching the deal. But I ran into a guy down there who he was a young guy like me at the time, and a dentist in California had hired him to buy houses in Atlanta, and he bought 35 or 40 of them when I met him. And his job was to go around and knock on people's doors and buy their houses. For this dentist, he was putting this big portfolio of houses together. And this guy did something brilliant in it. And when I figured out what he was doing, I thought, oh my God, you can literally make money just by changing the structure of something. And without getting into too much detail, when he'd buy these houses, a lot of these houses had second deed of trusts on them, right? Or he would talk them into carrying back a second deed of trust. And he was restructuring these notes so that there was a spread between what they were worth with a different interest rate and a different term and what the term was right now. And he would give them some cash for doing this. And then he would sell the note and make the difference. He found a way to kind of, I mean, maybe we don't call it investing. Maybe that's more like trading or arbitrage. But I put that into the category of consciousness because it's dreaming, it's imagining, it's creating. It's what can I do with this particular asset, how money flows through it? How can I change it or alter it in such a way that its value increases and then I can benefit from that?
Sure. Yeah, that's beautiful. So if you change the structure, you alter it even the slightest way, it doesn't have to be a tremendous effort. It just has to be acknowledging consciously what's possible with that project or that house or that investment.
And learning how to do it, learning to see differently. And I don't think there's a book on this. I think it's just learning how to do it. But if you already have a mindset of consciousness, you can bring that to this as you can to anything else in your life, relationships or work or whatever. And so I guess the last myth I would kind of debunk is that money is an end in itself, because that's a dominant philosophy in our culture that, once you get enough money, you'll be happy and all that stuff. And we just know that's not true from research. It's not true at all. I mean, what the research shows us really is that there is a correlation between happiness and income up to a certain level, but it's only about 70,000 a year. And after that, then satisfaction, happiness has no correlation with the amount of income or the amount of wealth that you have. But sure, there's a big difference between poverty and having enough to like own your home and buy your food and put your kids in school and things like that. But after that, it ceases to really matter. So back to our consciousness, when we begin to think, okay, this is really just about flow. It's not about me owning anything. It's about me participating in flow. And yeah, I own these assets or whatever, but they're going to be sold. Somebody else is going to own them. The energy of this thing is going to go on and on and on. I just got this thing for a season and now it's flowing through me. And if my consciousness is, I want it to flow for a higher good, for a better purpose, for something that is better for this planet or better for humanity, then we're really getting into a place where the universe can direct stuff to us.
Do the profits go up if you work for the universe?
Oh my gosh. No, but you work a lot easier because it comes to you. I'm amazed at the luck I have on things, but I don't think it's luck. I think it's just that it's seeing differently, and it's being in the world, seeing the energy of it differently. So you're knowing when there's something, but it's just like that house I told you about that we rezoned. I wasn't even looking for real estate that day. I was shopping for a friend who lived in another state who wanted to move out here. She found a house she wanted me to look at. I went out to look at the house for her. I didn't like that house. And I said, you got anything else? And he goes, no, not really. But I have this house I can't sell. Do you want to see it? So why did that come to me? I mean, I was just out there helping somebody else that day. And that seems to be the way it happens. If you create the consciousness, the vision, the imagining, the belief, and you get out there and begin working in it, it's something you can actually do and create as you're doing it. You don't have to go to school for it.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. That's brilliant. So a little definition too, because most people, this is another misnomer that in the world, most people think consciousness means you're not face down from drinking too much last night. You're up and your eyes are awake. So what is your definition of what consciousness is in your words?
Yeah, for me, I mean, most of our definitions of consciousness in our culture still go back to early philosophers that were dualistic and Newtonian in their thinking. And we live in the day of quantum physics where we know that reality has a very different structure to it. So my definition of consciousness is just simply, it's like epistemology in philosophy, which is the study of how we know what we know. So for me, consciousness is that there are different levels and different dimensions, different ways of seeing into different realities. and then different ways of processing and utilizing the information that we gain from those different experiences.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah. So basically, being willing to perceive out of the box in the simplest of terms, even if the box looks really, really real. If you go beyond it, then all these other possibilities could be waiting for the picking.
Yeah, and if everything in the material world is essentially created from things that we can't see, which it is, then why would our investment life be any different? Why should we think of it any differently?
Right.
So where do we spend our time? We spend our time residing in learning how to see, how to think, how to dream, create, imagine differently in this particular world we call investment. From that perspective, it will be a very different experience and very productive and fruitful.
Wow. Steve, thank you so much for your input today.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Anyone who's watching this in the future, please replay it, get the nuggets out of it, share it with anybody, join my channel. And if you would like to actually engage with Steve Peisner, contact me and we'll get you connected, because he has a lot of other things coming up in the near future that actually may be something that's profitable for you in your life in many different ways, not just money. Okay. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. All right.
Bye, guys.